Welcome to Champion Minded, the podcast for those who aim for excellence, not only in the sports arena, but in life. My name is Allistair, author, speaker, mindset and performance coach, and my goal is to help you unleash your unlimited potential and provide you with the tools to achieve greatness. Are you ready to become champion minded? Then let's do this.
Hello everybody, my name's Ed Bowers, and as always it's such a pleasure to have Allistair to interview again. This is probably like the fifth time with regards to interviewing you, Allistair. It's always a joy, but today's on a really great specific topic, which is mental toughness, and really digging deep of what mental toughness is, how we build confidence, but also the power of being mindful as well, and how all of those three elements incorporate being champion-minded, which you know that term quite well, but also having the right mindset in regards to what we do in sport, business, and in day-to-day life. So, Allistair, before we dig deep on each of these sections, because this is a three-part podcast, part one will be going through what is mental toughness. Part two is all about building confidence, and then part three is all about the importance of being mindful. So, Allistair, great to have you here. It's always a pleasure. Do you want to just introduce yourself before we get going into the podcast itself?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ed. It's always a pleasure to see you and to chat with you. And I'm super excited about this series. Of course, this is something we chatted about a few months ago, and now finally we're able to get it out there. And I think there could be no better time than doing this right now, because we've all had a challenging 12, 15 months, however long it is now. We've all lost perspective of time as well. So, I think the timing of this is great. There's definitely, we can see now light at the end of the tunnel with things moving forward. So yeah, super excited about this.
Absolutely. Let's get straight to it. So this is part one. What is mental toughness? So Allistair, let's get straight to it. What's your definition of mental toughness, and why is it so important as well? Not just in sport, but our day-to-day lives in general.
Yeah, well, you see, mental toughness is another word for mindset, and mindset is about your attitude. We get to choose our attitude, we get to choose our mindset, and we get to choose if we're going to be mentally tough or not. Now, you ask 10 people what mental toughness is, and you're going to get 10 different answers, especially, and there's a lot of athletes or coaches or sports people that listen to this. A lot of them will answer it's fighting hard on the court or the field, or it's pushing yourself, and so on and so forth. And yes, that is mental toughness to a degree, but mental toughness really comes down to grit. It comes down to doing the things that you don't really feel like doing, but you do them well. For me, that's one of the key areas of successful people, is that they're, successful people do things that others don't feel like doing or don't like to do. It's or what we call the not so nice stuff. In life as well, we all go through challenges. We all go through adversities, especially in the last, as mentioned, 12, 15 months. We've all gone through some unpleasant things, some more than others. And how have you come out of that? How have we come out of that? And, we've kept a close contact during that time, which I'm very, very grateful for, having contact with you during that time. And, I've gone through struggles. I've gone through things when you're going through it, it's not pleasant. But now coming out the other side, it's made me a stronger person. It's made me a more mentally tougher person. I maybe didn't realize it then that was going to happen, but and that's why I always say, when you're going through, I think it was Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Absolutely. And firstly, it's been a pleasure sort of working with you the last 12 months, because we've had our ups and downs, we've had our moments. But just to be clear for the listeners or viewers who do watch this, being mentally tough doesn't mean your character or personality with regards to who you are. Like, when I think of mental toughness, I think you have to be an athlete, be in the military, being a leader, but actually we're all mentally tough. It's not, when I say traits, it's not like you have to be a hard character. It's more how we deal with a situation. Is that just correct? My goal in this first part of the podcast is make sure everybody knows what being mentally tough is all about.
Yeah, exactly. Mentally toughness is not necessarily a UFC fighter or whatever. Mentally tough can be someone that's, again, like we said, going through adversity, going through struggle that maybe we might not even know anything about. So it's it's not just as we see in the sports world, someone that competes hard, or a Serena Williams or something like that. Mental toughness is really about the choices you make. It's about the attitude you bring. It's about I have this saying as well. It's not my quote, of course, but things don't happen to you; they happen for you. And that's always been an approach I've taken when going through adversity. Is this is not happening to me. This is happening for me. Knowing the bigger reason, once I come through this.
You've mentioned a few times with regards to mental toughness, it comes down to adversity and challenge. Now, are they the same?
That's a good question. Look, adversity is something that we don't necessarily want to bring upon us. Adversity can be more of a surprise, if you like. Adversity was brought on through COVID. We didn't expect what was going to happen, and all the shutdowns and lockdowns and business and so on and so forth. Challenge, I think, is something more I see as, you challenge yourself to be better. You challenge yourself to, increase your level in whatever it may be it in a sport or whatever. That's a challenge. Doing something that you maybe haven't done before, that's a challenge. Adversity, I think, is more the unexpected, and how you deal with that. The most successful people in the world are problem solvers. They come up with solutions quicker. So, adversities and challenges and things happen all the time, but how do you respond to them?
So with regards to mental toughness, I'm digging deep because I'm going to give one example I'm going through as a challenge. Is I'm trying to run 10K under an hour. And I did it last Saturday and I was literally 35 seconds off the goal. But I've been doing a lot more sprint training, and literally that's when I do the sprint training and I'm increasing my distance, that's where I'm experiencing the mental toughness during that 30-minute session. It's like, I want people to realize do you have to get in a certain flow state or a certain mentality of training to experience mental toughness, because we're not mentally tough every day of every minute of every hour. So with regards to the challenges, that's when it's the process of when we trying to compete at a high level with regards to a challenge, and also have that motivation to achieve that goal as well.
Yeah, well, there's a great example you just said there of a challenge. You gave yourself a challenge to run 10Ks under an hour, which is a really, really good time. During that process, you were probably, and I used to compete at a high level as well of, in a race, for example, I know I'm going to go through some stages where there's maybe that little voice saying, oh, not today, or it's not going to happen, or, oh, I'm feeling tired. There's going to be that little voice. And I think that's where mental toughness comes in as well, as like you quietening that voice of doubt, you quietening that I'm not feeling good, I'm not this and that, because that's going to come to you. And when I work with athletes or work with people and say, understand when you're challenging yourself, there's going to be what I call mini attacks of doubt, of maybe it's not going to happen today, or, is my goal too big, for example. And that you're brought to a point of making a decision. Do you quit or do you push through? And, for you, for example, you pushed through. So that was an example of mental toughness there, if you like.
Absolutely. I was going to just give an example. Literally yesterday, I did one 50-meter sprint, and then I was going to do it again because I had a 15-second break. But then I did it and I only did halfway. So I walked back, didn't quit. I just did it again, but it was a lot better technique. So I think what I'm trying to say to listeners is you have to break through those mental barriers. Is that correct with regards to mental toughness? Because you have to be in that zone. Yeah. That's the word I use, is when I'm in that zone where I'm pushing the barriers, where I don't really want to run faster, but I know it's going to benefit me when I accomplish my goal. That's how I define mental toughness. It's getting myself in that situation. Like, for example, I don't know if you know this, but Muhammad Ali, when he trained for boxing, he used to, let's say, do 500 push-ups and then start his actual training to do the 1,000 or whatever, or the skipping ropes. He had to get in that state of like literally training in the hardest conditions, which pushed the barriers, not just of his physique, but also the mental state when to compete in the ring. I don't know if you've heard that example before, but his training regime was pretty elite.
Yeah, so, I mean, we just look at Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Kobe, of someone that would be in the gym an hour before his teammates to work on his free throws. He would want to do 400 free throws before practice started. And they'd say, why do you do that? Obviously he wants to get the extra reps in, but he said, games are won and lost when there's fatigue present. That's when opportunity's there. And so I wanted to be in a fatigue type of state in the practice with my teammates to push myself further. There's another example of mental toughness, just exactly what you were talking about Muhammad Ali. He chose, and there's that word again, choice. He chose to do some extra work before he started.
And would you say mental toughness is healthy to a point with regards to, we'll be talking about mindfulness later on with this series, but I would just like to educate the listeners that there's a difference between mental toughness and pushing too hard, where it leads to that burnout or overtraining. I just want to clarify that as well. That's okay.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned there, we're going to get that into the mindfulness, which I think is part 3 of the series, where we'll maybe get into a little bit of mental health. And I think that's where it goes as well of, when is too much too much? Personally speaking, I burned myself out 2 or 3 times back in the day when I was an athlete by just doing too much, where I became really, really ill. I contracted an immune virus, which really it was like having a severe flu for about a year. Sometimes I just couldn't get out of bed. And that's where, it can become, I'll admit I was a very, very mentally tough athlete. I could push myself to exhaustion and then want to keep going. Or obviously it had an effect on my health. So yes, there is a point where, you've got to be careful in that respect.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it's just when you do something, and I know the majority of people that are listening to this right now want to improve themselves. They're high performers. That's why they're listening to the Champion Minded podcast, because they want to improve. And, you've just got to be sensible as well of how much is too much. There's this word balance. Is there balance when you're pursuing excellence? It's very, very difficult because, where there's priorities, there's going to be imbalances.
I was going to say that it's the key word instead of balance, priorities, because really quick, going back to my running example, when I'm in that running state, when I go and do my running training, that's my priority. I don't think about work. I don't think about podcasts. That's my zone. I have my phone off. And then I just know I've got to push myself. And it's quite hot in the UK at the moment. It's like a little heat wave. It's even more like challenging now, but I know I'm getting the benefits with the results. So we're getting near the end of part 1, but just on that point, is prioritization a better word than balance with regards to mental toughness?
Yeah. Where your attention goes, where your time goes is where your priorities are. If it's sitting in front of Xbox or being on social media for the hours there, well, that's a priority for you, for example. So, again, talking about successful people and high performers, is their priorities go to their skill. It goes to their craft. The best invest in themselves. They listen to podcasts, they read books, they study up on their industry. I mean, you know yourself, you have one of the most successful podcasts in your field. You spend a lot of time researching and you spend a lot of time reading about it, and that's why you've become who you are today and what you do. So yes, you've put priorities into that, for example, where you haven't had balance in other areas, possibly where becoming great in anything, there is going to be imbalances and spending less time with friends and so on and so forth. But those are the choices you make.
Absolutely. But now we're doing all the learning. I'm all about application. You know this on my podcast show. It's all putting knowledge into practice. What guidance, tips would you give to the listener now to improve their mental toughness in sport, or even in, I think day-to-day life's better because it means you've got better focus in anything they do with regards to what's prioritizing them with regards to their focus?
Well, I'm holding up a pen here right now for those that maybe can't see that are listening to this on the podcast or an audio. And I'm a very big advocate of writing things down, of journaling. So if you want to become more mentally tougher, then identify the areas where you want to be more mentally tougher, and what that looks like to you. Maybe use an example of an athlete or someone in your industry that, who's a great podcaster or who's great at, music or whatever field you may be in, business, corporate, whatever, that models a certain way you'd like to be. What do they do? What are their habits like? What does their day look like? Today, it's so easy for us to find information on people, mentors, etc. I have mentors I've never met that I read books from, or I follow them on Twitter, for example, that they're mentors to me in a way. And, their habits, what do they do? What does their daily structure look like? All these things. And that's how we can create a better mindset or mental toughness, for example. So hopefully this part has explained a little bit more that mental toughness is not just someone, like you said, in the Navy or in a UFC ring, for example. No, mental toughness is the choices we make on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And just to finalize, would you say having that goal, I think I call it the carrot, that motivates us to achieve what we want to achieve? Because from my experience with my running goal, as you say, now it's more of a prioritization in my lifestyle. I've learned the goal is the key thing. Like when I crush my hour target, I know I need to do, my next one's going to be 45 minutes, because if I don't have that next goal in place, it'll be the reverse of mental toughness. I think it'll be laziness, because, I think you always have to have that what next from a mindset perspective. I'd love your thoughts on that point before we wrap up part one.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it, two key words, challenge and adversity. And that was a great question, because here we're going there again. You've set yourself a challenge, and there's going to be some adverse moments of doubt or pain or lactic acid or whatever it may be that's building up in the body that's saying, Ed, stop. And now you're making a choice. And again, when we're challenging ourselves, whatever area that may be in, there's going to become points or along the way where, it's going to challenge you, and it's going to ask you, do you want to continue? Do you want to go through this? This is hurting. This is painful. This is time consuming. I'd rather be doing something else. And, when you push through that, that's where you gain more mental toughness.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. We're going to wrap up now for part one. Let me know, and Allistair know on Twitter, your biggest learning lesson, and with hashtag, shall we say, Mental Toughness Series, and literally get connected with us on Twitter, because we'd love to hear your thoughts with regards to this episode, and make sure you get involved in part two, which is all about building confidence.
So there you have it, guys. Part one of our 3-part series on mental toughness. I hope you enjoyed that one. Join us for part two, which will be released next week on the 17th of June, and that is on building confidence. Like Ed said, please send in your feedback, send in your questions. We'd love to hear from you, of course, with the hashtag Mental Toughness Series. As always, this podcast is available on iTunes, YouTube, Amazon Podcasts, and via my website, allistairmccaw.com. Connect with me on social media. I'm on Twitter at Allistair McCaw, Facebook, Allistair McCaw page, and on Instagram, Be Champion Minded. Until next time, remember, you were made for greatness. Now go do the work. Stay champion minded.